Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the gallery, staff and Richmond Valley Councils to our ordinary meeting on Tuesday the 19th of November 2024. I'll open the meeting with acknowledgement of country. Richmond Valley Council recognises the people of the Budjalung Nations as custodians and traditional owners of this land, and we value and appreciate the continuing culture, connection to lands, their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region in the past, present and future. Item 2, I'll ask the General Manager to read the prayer, please.
Dear Lord, we meet to serve our Richmond Valley community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, and to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognise our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Item 3 is public access, and there's been no request. Apologies. We have one apology from Director Zeller. Everyone else is here. Item 5, mayoral minute. There is no mayoral minute. We go over to page 6, confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting on the 22nd of October. Could I get a mover, please?
Moved, Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey and a seconder.
Yeah, I'll second.
Councillor Hayes. Does any councillor wish to dispute those accuracy of those minutes from that meeting? Put that motion then. All those in favour? Can everyone put their hand up if you're voting in favour, please? You against that, councillor? Thank you. Matters arising out of the minutes. Any council got a matters arising? No matters. We'll move on to item 8, declarations of interest. Has any council got any declarations of interest? Mr. General Manager, have you ever received any?
No, none received.
Thank you. Petitions, nil. Notice of motions, nil. I'll move over to item 11.1 and I'll move my mayoral report.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Morrissey. Is there any questions or business arising out of that? Councillor Hayes.
Just an update on the Stop the Iron Gates meeting. What was that one all about? On the 21st of October.
Oh, I had a couple of local residents from down there come up and had a meeting with me. It was prior to the last meeting. Just let them know that what their thoughts were, and it was similar to the address they gave here at the meeting on the 9th. I'd just like to mention also that on Remembrance Day at Evans Head, Councillor Murray and Hayes represented council down there, so thank you for doing that for us on behalf of council. If there's no other items, I'll put that motion and all those in favour. Carried. Thank you. Delegates' reports. We have one delegate report. Can I get a mover, please, for page 9?
Move the recommendation.
Councillor Humphries, I'll second. Any business arising out of that? I'll put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Matters determined without debate. Has any councillors got any matters they'd like to call? Councillor Walker.
14.3, Mr. Mayor.
Any other councillor?
Yeah, 15.1. It's a planning one anyway.
Any other, Councillor Morrissey?
17.4, please, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, 17.4.
17.4.
Any other councillors? I'll call 14.1, 14.2. 15.1's been called. 17.1 and 17.3. Any other? So I believe we need a motion for 16.1, 16.2, 16.3, 16.4, 17.2. Is that correct?
Yep.
Can I get someone to move that, please?
I'll move that, Mr Mayor. Thanks.
Second.
Councillor Humphries, thank you.
Just noting there's no 16.1.
16.1, no.
Sorry?
No 16.1, is it? No.
15.1?
No, 0.
Right.
There is a 16
Oh, sorry. Did I not say 16.1?
one.
Yeah, I said 16.1. Did you want to call it or not?
It was one of the issues with the early version of the business paper. Just the content was an error. So there are 4 items in 16. There's 16, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So the first item is naming of unnamed roads and bridges. Second one is closure of unnamed laneways adjoining Patricia Street Casino. 16.3 is Reardon's Lane. 16.4 is Cooper's Lagoon.
None of the 16s were called.
No, that's correct. Yep.
All right. So we're clear. We're voting on 16.1, 2, 3, 4, 17.2. Yeah? Yep. I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, we'll now move on to page 16, 14.1, and I'll move that. Can I get a seconder, please?
Yeah.
Councillor
Second, Mr.
Morrissey.
Mayor.
Councillors, as we know, this is a first off. It's never been done before. And I'll only speak briefly on it. The budget implications under that heading. During the past term of council, which was one of the shortest on record for New South Wales, council has secured a total of $148.9 million in government funding and community infrastructure for infrastructure upgrades and programs. I believe that's for that short time, it's just an amazing what we've done. I know a lot of it's from flood funding, but you could just imagine if we weren't being able to achieve that kind of funding. The other things are the Community Strategic Plan, State of the Valley Report, Progress and Delivery of the CSP, and when you look at also on page 17, the third dot, more than 150 million in development approved for the Richmond Valley since 2022, including 56.4 million in commercial and industrial investment that will create more local jobs. I believe that we're on the verge of becoming a regional growth centre with all that industrial development we hope to bring to our community. So it's started, and I believe over the rest of the coming term there will be a lot of development happening in our area. So I've read the report, and I think it's really showcases our achievements over that time, over the 12 months. So any other debate?
Just to
Councillor
make
Humphries.
a comment, Mr Mayor, I think another important point about this State of the Valley report is that it's another link. Like, we've got our IPNR and we've got our Community Strategic Plan, and within the strategic plan we've got the 4 areas and then the 12 objects. I'm not sure if I've got those words right, but I think it's the 4 categories and then the 12 objectives. So they're in our CSP, and then in the State of the Valley report, it actually revisits all that, and it's just tying all that together and having a really good look at how that went. And so when we go out to our community with our big conversation, we'll be reviewing and talking about, like, asking them about their priorities and their aspirations, but we're not starting from scratch, as I can see it. We've already got it there, it's linked together, and we're just going forward and just saying, look, what else do you need? How right have we got this? Tell us all about it in the conversation. So I'm really looking forward to the consultation program when it comes in December, and really keen to go out there and just find out, are our strategies what the community want, and how's it all heading? So it's a really it's an excellent tool as our first step into our communication, public communication with our community.
Any other speakers? Yeah, I was just going to mention that as part 3 of the recommendation. That will come to the December ordinary meeting, so I'm looking forward to that too. So. Okay, that closes the debate. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. 14.2, the annual report. I'll move that. Seconder.
Second.
Councillor Cornish, thank you. Just a couple of points like before. The annual report details achievements, progress, statistics and financial performance over the previous financial year, highlighted, which is council's in a very sound financial position, which is a good thing, as I mentioned earlier. Disasters can knock your finances around, but we've come through that pretty well. Then you go over the page, strengthening our role in the region, creating great places to live, protecting our unique environment, and delivering for our community. That includes the signature projects on the previous page. Council has delivered, which our community are enjoying and taking advantage of. There's five there. And I'd like to say that it's a pleasure to deliver this annual report. I think we've delivered for our community, and you can have surveys and consultation, but the biggest survey you can have and consultation you can have is an election. And I believe at the last election our community endorsed and supported what this council has done over the last 12 months and that last short term of council. So I'll leave it at that. Does any other one else want to mention anything? Councillor Murray.
Quick comment on the creating great places to live section, the first dot point there. Just for accuracy, I believe that the attendance was well over 1,300 people at the Korakai Splash Fest. I volunteered at those events, and I know they had 1,300 wristbands and they ran out, so there were just more people that attended that's recorded, so it'd be good to update that for accuracy. Not sure about Woodburn, and just wondering whether an acknowledgement to Mid-Richmond Neighbourhood Centre, who were largely behind the production of particularly Korakai events, should be mentioned as part of those events.
You get that, Mr. Gentleman? Thank you. An input. Any other speakers? I don't need a right reply. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. 14.3, I believe Councillor Walker called this one.
I don't wish to move it though, Mr Mayor. Does it need to be moved before I speak, or...?
If you could, that's usually the...
I don't wish to move it. I just want to comment on something.
Can we get a motion first?
I'm happy to move it.
Seconder?
Second.
Councillor Cornish. Councillor Humphries, as a mover.
No, thank you.
Councillor Cornish. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I don't agree with much in this paper, but I'm not going to raise. I'll just vote against it. But I want to refer to the first paragraph on page 4, if I could. I found the paragraph to be not in keeping with the tone of the report, and I thought the language used was inappropriate, very aggressive, and it offended me somewhat because it reflects in my mind the personal view of whoever wrote it. You know, words like anglicised pageantry and some of the other commentary in there, I think, is not in keeping with the spirit of the report as it's written. So I would ask that perhaps be reviewed before it was sent off.
Mr General Manager?
Happy to take that feedback on board. That's why we've
That's
brought
why
this
it's
as a draft submission, so we can review that. So that was the first paragraph on page 4. Yep.
Councillor Hayes?
Just might add to that, look, when I read it, I thought, you know, it's a good report. It's a letter that's really telling everyone how we feel. And look, yeah, we're sticking it up them, but maybe we need to do that to get our point of view across of how we want to conduct, how we run our meetings without them telling us how we can do it. So, I don't know, yeah, the language in it is, you know, pretty to the point, but I think it needed to be. So, I'll leave it to the rest of the council.
Any other speakers? When I read it, I thought it was straight to the point, I will admit. But I can tell you, I was at a JO meeting last week. I've been on that forum. The country mayors the other last Friday, even though it wasn't totally debated, there was a lot of talk around on the fringe of it, and when at break times, and I believe at the local government conference which wrapped up today in Tamworth. I've been talking to some people that were out there, and it was the local government minister was there, and he was, put it this way, there's a lot of, the majority of the room out there weren't in favour of a big majority of the proposals. Whether he'll listen, I don't know. A couple of members of Parliament don't seem to think he will. But anyway, we'll just have to see what the outcome is, and whatever it be, we'll have to work by those guidelines. So, but on speaking with the submission, yeah, might be straight to the point, but I think on this one, we have to really tell them how we feel.
Just, you asked for submissions from the councillors prior to preparing this document. Did you get many? Without giving too much away?
I think we got feedback from pretty much everyone, either from the workshop, but also via email. Most of it tended to be around, the issue of not having information sessions closed to the public. Obviously, tend to be the focus. There's obviously a lot more in that discussion paper. And I think that's why we've suggested that a wholesome review of Code of Meeting Practice is a better place to deal with that issue in its entirety.
Any other speakers? Councillor Humphries, right to reply?
Yeah, thank you. In supporting the letter, I was very pleased to see points that I'd raised included in the letter. In my experience as a councillor, having worked with staff and councillors over a period of years, I'm fully supportive of the language in this letter. That paragraph, don't mind that being taken on notice, but everything about that letter, it's almost disgraceful to say or put us in a category. I don't think I've ever said a bad word or had a bad word said to me at this council chamber. So to just be lumped into, and that's just one of the issues. Like I read it a lot, and I just decided to pick out the main pieces in it that offended me the most, and too many of them offended me, and I support this letter as strongly as I've ever supported anything else in this council.
Thank you. That closes the debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? You against? In favour? Against? Against. It's recorded. 15.1, page 25, Councillor Hayes.
Yeah, just, I'd like to call the recommendation as written. I'm happy with the recommendation. I've just got some questions.
We'll just get a seconder.
Second.
Seconder?
Yeah, second.
Councillor Hayes.
Just some clarification around the amount of lots, the original amount of lots. It's not that clear in that report of how it's evolved to where it is in the final wash-up. If that makes sense? It talks about 43 lots to start with. In there, it talks about they had to withdraw some because they had, the SES thought they had 4 metres of water inundation, and then we get back to a subdivision that's still got 43 lots, but it's got 8 lots with up to 2 metres of water, possible water inundation in a large flood. It's not that clear of how it's evolved and what lots are being pulled out. If you have a look there on one of those drawings, I haven't got it open yet, but it says, in one colour it says original, and the other colour it says what's been approved. There's something just not quite right there. What we're actually trying to get approved.
I mean, a contributing factor to that, just from my initial response, is that the lot size has been reduced. So that may have been a result of obviously some of the land not being available, so there's been allowed reduction so that there can be more lots on the land that is available for development. So that will be a contributing factor as to why the numbers have shifted, but maybe not as much as they would have shifted if the initial lot size was sustained. So the area of developable land has reduced, but the minimum lot size has also been reduced to maintain that yield.
Just highlighted some bits here. It says, note that the PMF event 20, and this is under the New South Wales State Emergency Services Assessment. It says 28 lots out of 43, 28 out of 43 are either completely or partially inundated with flood depth exceeding 4 metres and classified as high hazard. And then when we get over to the bit further over, you get that map there, and there's still 43 lots in there, and it only shows 8 of them that have got possible inundation, and it says somewhere in that report that it's only possible to get 2 metres. So I assume they've reduced the size and moved them up the hill, but what was the original? It's the original layout's not there. That's what I'm assuming.
Look, I know that the commentary on this, from DECU, I'd be focusing on what they said with their flood division rather than SES, because SES tend to come from a viewpoint of minimising the need to respond. That's where this is similar sorts of feedback with the Riley's Hill rezoning, and it was around evacuation routes, and that SES quite rightly come from a lens of, they have limited resources to respond to emergencies, so they're going to look at it through the lens of ideally no more development, and we all know that's not achievable.
Yeah, we're aware of that, but it's the report doesn't give you what was up front and what's actually we're trying to get approved. It's not clear. And the other thing in there, shelter in place, is that going to be something now that's going to be part of every subdivision that's suggested in anywhere where it's going to be isolated? So they become they will become community titles, not Torrens title land.
Not necessarily, but I'll let Director Jones comment on that.
Thank you.
Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor. So the term shelter in place means that in an event, people will be isolated and they will not be able to leave. There's no suggestion that there's going to be community title, there's going to be a community building as a shelter. It's just people stay home because the road might be cut for a period of time. So, that's the comments. General Manager's correct. If you read the DECU comments, they do note that all the lots that are going to be created as part of this planning proposal are above the 1 in 500 year plus climate change levels, and that the shelter in place being people stay home if they're isolated for a period of time is the best option for this subdivision.
Just Director Jones, at this stage, of planning proposal stage, is the number of lots is indicative. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's somewhat indicative. So the analysis has been done. This planning proposal has been around for a number of years. There were issues originally with farmland status. There were issues with flooding, and the issues with flooding only were exacerbated post-2022 flood. So it has been looked at, manipulated, negotiated, with soil testing, etc. That's how the lot sizes were actually reduced from our normal large lot residential, was because we need to make sure that on-site sewage management systems are able to work in this location with the topography and soil type. So we have managed, with studies and science, get down to the 7,000 square metres, which allowed them to have a greater lot yield to pull all the proposed lot areas out of that flood-prone land and away from that significant farmland also. So there has been a significant amount of negotiation, conversations and feedback from various government departments to get us where we are today. And personally, I'm satisfied with the outcome that we've currently got at around 43 lots plus a residue. Give or take 1 or 2 lots, depending what the final proposal is for the layout and the construction for the subdivision. It may change by 1 lot or so, but I'd say that around that 43 residential, large lot residential lots is the aim for this proposal.
So the SES report was done on larger lots. Is that right?
The SES has been consulted through the process. Their last consultation, which is noted in this report with their feedback, is as recent as sort of, October this year. So that's their current thinking, and the thinking, again, post the 2022 flood has changed slightly with emergency services, but I think the best, what I can point you to is the DECU comments is coming from a sort of a background and a scientific perspective, rather than responding to an emergency perspective.
Thank you.
Councillor Cornish. Any other speakers? I'll just say that it's good to see some lots are going ahead down in that area. With some of the rules that we've seen before, where some building blocks are high and dry, no chance of ever flooding, and they've been rejected through access. I think this is a good outcome, and hopefully people want to live in rural areas and way out of flood area. They should be allowed to do that. And, so write a reply.
Just another comment. I see back on 16.3, the Reardons Lane road widening where it meets the Coracai Road. That's all, built into that subdivision being quite a good place to live, and safety issues that's been rectified as we go along. So I think it's good. So.
Close the debate. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. Unanimous. I think, councillors, we now move to 17.1, and we have Mr. General, we have a presentation. Is that correct? Mr. Rogers, would you like to?
Yeah, we do. So, just get to it's obviously our draft financial statements, which are currently out on public exhibition. And tonight we present those to the public, and we have our auditor with us. So we have Ben Rogers from HLB Man Judd, provides our audit service. So Ben is with us and has put together a presentation which you have a copy with you, and it will be on screen. So I'd just like to welcome you, Ben. Thanks for joining us this evening, and just look forward to your overview and perspective on our financial statements. So I'll hand over to you. Thanks.
It's coming through okay?
It's just a, Simon, it's just a touch muffled. Is there
Okay.
anything you can... Not really. Okay.
Is that any better?
Slightly better.
Okay, we'll try.
We can hear you. It's
So-
just a little bit muffled, but we'll
Okay.
persevere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, just firstly, before I begin, just apologies for Quinton Wong from the Audit Office and also Adam Bradfield. Both send their apologies for the meeting today. Look, the presentation, if you've all got that in front of you, and it may be up in front of you on a screen, I can't obviously see that from where I sit, but I'll talk through that in terms of basically outlining the upcoming annual work program from the Audit Office, and also I'll present the report on the conduct of audit for which we've audited your financial statements for the year. Yeah, okay, I see you've skipped ahead just to the annual work program, so I might start there. The earlier slide is just a commemorative slide regarding the Audit Office's been auditing councils for approximately 200 years. Just a little bit of brief history there on their behalf. And obviously also they gained the mandate to audit local government since 2016. If we just move through onto the annual work program slide, yep. The planned areas of focus that the Audit Office is having a look at from 24 to 27 is the financial reporting and performance, obviously a key matter. Also internal controls and governance is also going to be quite a hot topic moving forward. The other piece I just wanted to mention there as well is, and highlight, is a key focus on long-term financial planning. So obviously they're quite I guess adamant into looking into the sustainability of local councils and the like moving forward. If I could just skip to the next slide, please. This slide just demonstrates the upcoming audit reports and their expected release dates. I think that the few that I just want to highlight that probably have the most relevance for your council, obviously the road asset management report coming up in 24-25, also the long-term financial planning report from local government that will be released next year. And then in 25-27, just the bottom one there around audits of governance issues, well, with a particular council. So I believe they're going to take a select few councils and sort of do a bit more of a deep dive around governance and key findings and key matters coming out of that. And that will be shared on the Audit Office New South Wales website. All those reports will be available. Also, the current reports that they've done for 23-24 year are currently available as well. And I would probably highly suggest councillors and also management to take a look at those and the key findings that have come out of them. If I could just go to the next slide, please. Yep. So a couple of key points here around audit results. In terms of that particular topic, the Audit Office is focused on the opinions that have been issued for this year and the types of those opinions, and also the quality and timeliness of financial reporting. So look, I'd just like to say firstly in terms of Richmond Valley Council, you know, all timelines are met as far as I'm aware from the reporting piece, and was a good, you know, we've had a good relationship with management to keep everything on track and meet those set timelines. Financial controls dot point there, point number 2. That's around sort of common management letter points and themes coming across from the council. So effectively the Audit Office is going to have a look at those and basically do sort of a benchmark around sort of key matters that I think are topical currently, and will provide an update to council on those. Again, some of the key points that they're looking at around that, in that particular sense on the management letter points, is asset management, also the long-term sustainability compliance with regulations specifically around budgeting and integrated planning. The next one, which is actually an emerging focus and has been for the past few years, but is getting bigger, is the IT and cyber controls. So particular themes around key IT controls, key cyber controls as well. There's definitely been highlighted. I mean, you know, you only have to read the newspapers or hear on, you know, the local news of all the cyber incidents and issues that are popping up at this point in time. So there's a lot of focus on that. From a governance perspective, the key matters that is of focus is fraud control. So that's particular looking around sort of the training that's happening, I guess, within the council level around just sort of your annual code of conduct attestations, fraud risk assessments, and then probably flowing on from that just around conflicts as you're managing any conflicts of interest and disclosing those matters. BCP, that's around so your crisis management. So I guess your backup plans if there was any disasters or emergency events that have come up. I guess key for Richmond Valley Council and also I guess the New South Wales area. Obviously, unfortunately, we've had some pretty decent floods in the past that have come up. So it's more planning around if these events occur. Where's your data servers located? Where's your, I guess, all your information that's needed if you need to get back up and running. That's that piece around the BCP. And then internal audit as well is a key focus, just around, is it well resourced? Have we got the right people in place performing an internal audit plan moving forward? And it's well resourced, and also what are those key internal audits being performed in terms of, it might be payroll or asset management, procurement, that's actually being performed, and there's a plan in place there to I guess increase the controls moving forward. If I just go to the report on the code of conduct slide. So look, I'd firstly like, just back one slide, just the heading. Yep. Just like to mention that we've issued a clean audit opinion on the 23rd of October for both the general purpose financial statements and the special purpose financial statements to council, which is good. We had no material misstatements or issues of note, which is I think a very positive result for the council. There's 6 key performance ratios within the financial statements. Look, they are located in a section G41, but I will talk about those in a moment, just on that next slide coming up. Out of those 6 key performance ratios, 4 out of the 6 were met. I will just talk to the 2 that weren't met and the reasons why. And look, it's fairly common themes we've seen across particular councils as well around those. I don't think it's what I would say is too much cause for concern, but it's sort of more effective around funding and what's been provided in terms of operating grant funding. So if we just stay on that slide, I see you've just moved to there around the income statement. So look, the key drivers from your rates and annual charters revenue, obviously there was a rate peg increase that's helped drive that up as well. The grants and contributions revenue, that's down a bit this year. There was quite a significant amount of natural disaster funding, operating grant funding received in the prior year. Hence, that funding hasn't been, I guess, reciprocated this year. That's why you can see the reason for that grant funding moving down. However, operating result after the grant funding received is sitting at 27 million, which is a good result, although it is lower than last year. But again, key driver, I think, of that is the fact of that natural disaster, funding coming through, and a lot of that was to do with the sort of 2022 flood event. And then net operating result before capital grants, obviously you get quite significant capital grants and contributions during the year. I guess that's more just sort of more how dependent council is on those capital grants and contributions, which again, I can see it's a negative there, but reflective of other councils I know I've seen as well, that's fairly consistent. I mean, you're obviously highly reliant on grant funding. We just move to the second slide, the next slide of the cash position. So cash and investments slightly decreased from about 90.6 mil to 82.3 during the year. A lot of that, or a significant portion of that cash is 49.8 million is externally restricted. Many councils, can often potentially breach legislation by not having effective controls to manage those externally restricted funds. Not the case, obviously, for Richmond Valley Council. We didn't find any matters of note there. And look, the cash and investment levels have had a positive impact on your current ratio, your debt service current ratio, and also your cash expense ratio, which are your other metrics in those 6 key factors that I mentioned earlier. They're also highlighted in the financial report under that G41 section. If we just move on to the next slide, the operating performance ratio. So again, look, the key driver in terms of why this, I guess, the ratio is quite sort of -% there at 16.6. A lot of that's to do with that funding around the operating grant revenue there. That's pretty much a key pressure, and obviously, you know, the cost of supply contracts and, you know, contract work is only going up, as we know. So that's really the key driver there. It can look quite skewed. I don't think it's a significant issue in terms of from what I've seen from other councils. I think, you know, you still had a $27 million result from continuing operations, as we mentioned earlier, which really is your bottom line driver there. If we have a look at the next slide, please. This is just around your own source operating revenue ratio. So the benchmark is 60%. We currently sit at 49.6% of that, which is a fairly upward trend, which we're moving in the right direction. And this is just how much funding, I guess, in terms of that own source funding that the council is utilising, and how reliant they are on external funding sources. So again, being a council, majority of councils are quite heavily reliant on external funding, but that trend is going the right direction, I think, and hopefully improves year on year for next year and beyond. Just go to the next slide. So this was just a little bit of a high-level overview of your asset renewals and new asset additions that occurred this year. So this is sort of a lot of where the spending obviously has gone. You know, whether that's, you know, new construction of roads, bridges, fixing roads, etc. Asset renewals for the year was 38.4 million. The prior year 30.4. So, you know, a fair bit of spending on in that front. And also, you know, new asset additions 18.9 mil versus 14.3. And look, finally, I'd just like to thank council and the finance team throughout the audit for, you know, their professionalism and cooperation. It was really much appreciated, and if anyone has any questions on what I've just mentioned, more than happy to try and answer them.
Any questions? Nothing? No, thank you, Mr. Rogers. You've done a good job, apparently. There's no questions pending.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for that.
Thank you for your attendance. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Councillors, 17.1 on page 45. I'll move that recommendation. Can I get a seconder, please? Don't be shy.
Second.
Councillor Humphries. Councillors, we've all heard the presentation. The only couple of things I would say is it's when you get an unmodified opinion, that's a good result. Oh, sorry, did I get it?
Oh, after you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, sorry. When you get an unmodified opinion, good result for council. The only I would like to mention, but there's a couple of our ratios have gone below the expected level or above it. There are the explanations there, but I might ask the General Manager what the future brings us with a few of those. I know we're working heavily or hard to get them all under, but I would doubt there'd be many rural or regional local government areas that would be able to. Some of the city ones might, but it's pretty hard for, especially after you have disasters and you renew an asset, and then you have to depreciate them, which I notice is on one of the first graphs.
I'll look, if you want to step through those ratios, I think Ben in his presentation
Yeah.
talked, particularly about that operating performance ratio, which he was quite positive compared to, I think it's something we need to keep our eye on. I know there's contributing factors with our depreciation increase and the cost of the disposal of assets. So, we can sort of sit here and say that there are reasons why, but it does highlight, the importance. It is an important ratio. It is a ratio that the Office of Local Government probably looks at first. And so while from a cash perspective and when you have grants and contributions included, it looks like, it is a good result at the 27 mil. But this is the one that does get looked at. So it's something we need to keep our eye on. Last year, we're in the positive. So for me, it was a bit of a surprise. So for mine, something we need to keep our eye on, and we've made some adjustments in the quarterly budget review. That's another item this evening, early in the year, so that we can be less surprised and manage that through this financial year. But we'll also need to make decisions for our budget in 25-26. The own source operating revenue, being a ratio, our pool of funds has increased significantly with grant funding, and so in real terms our own source revenue will be similar, if not increasing, but because that pool of grant funds has increased so much, as a ratio it drops back down. And so as we get through disaster recovery and the injection of funds that we've had over the last few years, potentially that revenue total pool will reduce, and that own source will adjust upwards, because the own source was, prior to 2022, I'm pretty sure it was 2021 and before that, had been above the 60% threshold. But again, something to keep an eye on. That's why you have ratios, so you can monitor the trends. The other ones are positive. The one where there's on page 48, there is a red bar. I think that highlights the work that our revenue team do to work with our community around revenue collection to get that under the 10% is a good result. And then the other two that have some red in them is really around obviously what we've been through the last couple of years with damage to infrastructure, which we all know the gravity of that, and that we have been recovering from that. And does highlight the need to focus on our expenditure where we can. We need to renew our assets, make sure we're spending plenty to renew. We have built a considerable amount of new assets in the last few years, which adds to your maintenance, depreciation and other things. So we just need to be mindful of that. We obviously know the community want more of that. So it's a balance. So that's probably a bit of a summary, Mr. Mayor, of those key indicators.
Thank you. Councillor Humphries, the seconder.
Thank you. On page 46, there's a paragraph there that I'm always thinking about the reserves, and it talks about the level of the internally restricted reserves, and it just reads there that the balance of these reserves has remained stable in recent years, even though we've been through the pandemic, disaster recovery and the completion of consecutive large capital works programs, and is sufficient to fund future budgeted work. So when we're doing our planning and our budgeting and thinking of what we'd like for the community, it's very comforting to read that the annual report states that there are sufficient funds there for our budgeted works.
Probably should just make a comment there, just that doesn't reflect necessarily on the fact that will need to borrow some money into the future. So it probably could have been a little bit fulsome in its explanation, is the fact that obviously in our long-term financial plan is that $20 million allocation for a casino STP. So our reserves are in reasonable state. It'd be nice to have more. It's always nice to have more to be able to fund these things, but borrowing has a place as well, especially for intergenerational assets like sewage treatment plants that you aim to get 50 to 100 years out of them. So I think it was more just a comment, just to
Yeah, no, thank you.
keep that borrowing in mind, as well as the fact that we've got money.
Yeah, I
in the
appreciate
bank.
that, and I
Yeah.
will have another look at that with that
Yeah.
in mind, because I do understand that we do have the borrowings because of the amount of money that we need to spend on that infrastructure. So I will have to reread that, because I was very pleased to read this.
Well, we probably could have, I don't do it on the fly, whether that's discussed in the report, but borrowing is just something we need to keep in mind, and we can utilise as we plan to do with that. But obviously we want to secure some significant funding from our government partners.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Councillor Walker?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question. Before I ask the question, can I say I have great confidence in the financial team of Richmond Valley Council. As a former staff member and as a member of the community, I think you've got a great team, and I commend the team, particularly Ryan and Ailey, who I know do a great job, so that's beside the point. But my question is unrelated to the statements, but related, and that's on ARIC. I wondered if the General Manager could explain to me, for my knowledge, the makeup of ARIC and how they're appointed, and for what terms they're appointed, and what role they play in the oversight of the statements.
Mr General Manager?
Look, I might get Ms Martin, because Hayley is the Executive Officer for the ARIC, has been through the whole process of appointments, but also the fact that we are, by 30 June, there is the opportunity to review the makeup of that committee, and also to include a nominated councillor. So I'll hand over whether Director Gator or Ms Martin might want to just give us a little bit of those details on our ARIC. Thanks.
Thank you. So our current ARIC is made up of 3 independent members. They vary from across the state. We've got one that's in Sydney, one that's sort of in Western Sydney, and another one that's locally in Lismore. We have the opportunity to appoint a councillor to that committee, and we'll put a report to council in the future with regards to that. The current appointment of those 3 independents is up till 30 June 2025, in which case we'll put to council the either renewal of that or the appointment of new members. We have the option to phase out those members over a period of time, so that's something we'd like to do to keep a little bit of a consistency, but obviously you'll have the option on where we go forward with that when they're due for renewal.
So I was just going to add to that. So the chair, Ron Gillard, is on 8 or 9, I think 8 or 9 different committees that covers about 15 or 16 councils. So he's on some of the joint committees that are out there. So he has an extensive background, not only in local government. He comes out of the finance sector and the business sector. Other one is an accounting finance focused, and other is more legal background. So that skill set makeup is important. Yeah.
The other part of my question was what role does ARIC play in the draft financial statements?
So these statements have been to an ARIC meeting. Have you got any comments on what they contribute to that process?
The statements actually go to the ARIC before when they come back firstly to us as drafts, so it's really the first time we get to see them as well. They give them to us, and we send them off to ARIC, and then the actual auditors make a presentation to the ARIC. As far as oversight, they're mainly concerned in, I suppose, the result, but more so that the actual report comes back unmodified. They don't do a hell of a lot through the year regarding the statements. It's more once they've been completed, and that's when they first see them in draft.
Just a question that flowed from that audit presentation, where they said planned audits and reports. There's a list of about 7 or 8. Do they actually come to the ARIC meetings? I know I attend them when I can, but I don't recall those specifically coming to an ARIC, and I wonder when I saw that list where they're relevant. But potentially there is something from the Western Sydney Aerotropolis that we can learn from. But I think, there was a thought when Ben was giving us that presentation that we could add those reports or any future ones onto the agenda to make sure we're capturing, those lessons learned.
Yeah, definitely. They're just on the audit website, so they across the sector, and then they're just on the audit website for anyone to look at. So we can definitely,
Yeah, they're available, and just from what Ben said, he sort of triggered me to thinking about, the lessons learned from these reports, just to make sure we're capturing them. I know we receive them from the audit office, get emails and notifications, but it's probably useful to add it as an item for ARIC to at least, review those lessons and see how they're relevant for us. Did that answer your queries?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, very appreciative.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
It's made a query for me. What's ARIC? What's it stand for?
Audit, Risk
Review.
and Improvement Committee.
And have we had a councillor on that committee in the past, or is this something new for the next term?
That came to council. You may recall that Councillor Simpson was on that committee for a long time. Then they changed the rules, and the councillor could only be an observer. It came to council, and council resolved that they're all independent people, and we'd get the report anyway. So council resolved not to have anyone on it. Now, when they say observer, I don't know what actually. I know they wouldn't be a voting person, but whether they have got input in it, I don't know, or they just sit there and observe. I'm not sure of it.
I think they contribute to the meetings. It's up to the meeting and the meeting chair. I'd suggest it's a discussion based forum. There can be votings. Councillor Hayes, it was our internal audit committee, which prior to that was our entire council, and they changed guidelines, and we went through that process of change. And so you can have a councillor on there, but it can't be the mayor. So the mayor is specifically excluded from the ARIC makeup. But so you'll be getting a briefing on it well in advance of the need to make decisions around membership and then renewal of or seeking new independent members.
Any other speakers? I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Now move on to page 55, 17.3. And Mr General Manager, I believe we have another presentation.
Yes, Mr Mayor, as we normally do with the quarterly budget review, Ms Martin will give us an overview of the quarterly budget review. Obviously, the report spells out the key status through the year, and attached to that is the detailed quarterly review document. But it's just an opportunity to give you the highlights and if you have any questions before the matter is considered.
When you're ready, please.
Thank you. So we'll just review the quarterly budget review statement for the quarter ended 30 June 2024. So we've had an increase in operating income of $7.6 million up to $82 million, and an increase in operating expenditure of $13.7 million, which brings our net operating result before capital and capital contributions to a deficit of $9 million. Capital grants and contributions increased $10 million up to $51 million, which brings a net operating result, including capital grants, to $42.4 million. Our non-cash expenses have increased by $6 million, and that was largely due to a revision of our depreciation expenditure and our net loss on sale of assets. We've also got capital expenditure increasing $11.7 million up to an $85.9 million capital works program. Council's cash, unrestricted cash result has remained unchanged at $272,000. The major changes by department, building and maintaining roads, we've had an increase of $12.9 million in capital works, which is largely our natural disaster restoration works, of which $4.2 million is for the Bentley landslip. That's been offset by moving $7.6 million into next year for the Tatham Bridges project, which is scheduled to take place over 2 financial years. Real estate and development has increased $7 million in income and expenditure, with funding under the Bushfire Local Economic Recovery Fund for the Casino Industries Activation Project, which encompasses the construction of a roundabout on the Bruxton Highway adjacent to the proposed industrial development. Sports grounds, parks and facilities has an increase of $2.7 million in income and $3.9 million in capital expenditure, largely consisting of 2 grant-funded projects under the Community Assets Program, funded by Regional New South Wales for the construction of 2 clubhouses within Casino for Collie Park Netball and Casino Rugby League. The non-cash adjustments. So following the completion of the 2024 financial statements, we conducted a review of our depreciation budget for this year, which has resulted in a proposed increase of $3.9 million up to $24.3 million for 24-25, and that's a 4% increase on the actuals for 23-24. Most of those increases were in roads, in line with the revaluation of roads and bridges that occurred at 30 June 24, which resulted in an increased asset value of $161 million, along with $2.8 million in sewage services, in line with the accelerated depreciation for the future replacement of the Casino sewage treatment plant. Loss on sale of assets following the completion of the financial statements. Also, we've reviewed the history of those losses that we've realised, and based on an average, we're looking at about $2.2 million. So that's also been factored into the budget for this year. The major changes during this review were largely as a result of our flood restoration works being scheduled for roads and bridges. The capital works program is significant at $86 million, and obviously there's key risks around delivery of that program with availability of contractors, materials and favourable weather. We will continue to monitor that in future quarterly budget reviews and adjust accordingly, along with monthly budget reports. But overall, Council's financial position at year-end remains satisfactory.
Done? Any questions? No questions. That's a good birthday present for you, isn't it?
You didn't get away with it.
Councillors, we go back to on page 55, and I'll move that motion. Can I get a seconder, please?
Second.
Councillor Morrissey. I really haven't got any questions. It's pretty straightforward, and yeah, congratulations on the presentation. Councillor Morrissey. Any others? Put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. 17.4, page 60. Councillor Morrissey.
Recommendation, Mr Mayor, but I'm not going to be the nominee.
Do you want to elect the member, put this one in, elect the person, or what do you want to do? Yep. All right. We'll move that motion, then we'll get a nomination if anybody's... Oh, sorry?
Second.
Sorry. Thank you. All right. Okay. I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, we now need a delegate.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Murray.
Councillor Murray, you accept that?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Councillor Hayes, I'll accept.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Councillor Morrissey. Any other nominations? Congratulations. You are now our Park Northern Rivers delegate. General business on page 62, there's nil. Matters for information on page 63, item 19. Could I get a mover, please?
Yeah,
Councillor Hayes, seconder.
Second.
Councillor Humphries. Councillor Hayes, do you anything you want to?
Yeah, the Broadwater drainage information, it's a good report, and I know we workshopped it. I'm just wondering, when I picked up my council papers, I was reading, I went to Letterbox and I found this newsletter from the Reconstruction Commission. In there's a drainage a reset program. Did we apply for that? And were we unsuccessful? Because we're not listed there as being one of the councils that got any money out of it.
Yeah.
Just before you answer it, it's for projects that are council nominated for agricultural drainage sites requiring remediation or repairs following the 2022 floods.
You'll notice that one of the nominated organisations is Rouse. And so Rouse, as our floodplain manager, was involved with that program across our area. But I will say I've had conversations with Rouse in the last couple of weeks and their floodplain manager, and I or a delegate will be attending the next meeting that this program is having. The General Manager of Ballina Shire chairs that group, and we'll be getting into more detail around what's available, what's happening, and are things like those drainage outlets in Broadwater that appear to be silted up, who is responsible for clearing them? Because the advice from Rouse is they're not. They're responsible for the flood gate and the flap and the immediate area being 5 metres or so. But when you have a drain that goes down to the river that's probably at least, 20, 30 metres, that looks like it's silted up, the one that's adjacent to McDonald Street, someone needs to clear it. But there's a whole range of approvals that are required, and funding, and potentially this program is an opportunity to get some of those issues solved. But from the conversations I've had so far, that's one outlet. There's hundreds of them that need similar attention. So this, I think, is it $5 million? $5 million program. They're seeing that as, and they're achieving some good outcomes. So they want to make sure it's successful and go back to get some more cash because it's a big issue.
You might have recalled that at the last meeting I call those drains orphan drains because no one owns them. And I've talked to the General Manager of Rouse about it and some of the report. Today I rang him. General Manager was in the room, so we had a bit of a discussion about that. He agrees, but as the report says, some of those aren't Rouse's, some of them aren't Richmond Valley's, no one owns them. So that has to be clarified, because it's no good having a drain silted up nearly to the flat and it opens and the water can't get out. So we need to find out who's going to take responsible for those. And when you do that, then you've got to go through all the legislation and all the government departments to be able to clean them out. So I noticed also you said the word agriculture drains. Well, that's it. Some of these are in towns, so they're not classed as an agriculture. So that has to be addressed too. It's no good getting the funding to clean the agriculture, drain it to those town drains, and then it can't get out. But I do know that Richmond Valley got some money to clean some drains out in Corricoy and Woodburn at one stage, I think. They were urban.
That was urban drains under natural disaster.
Rouse has cleaned out some drains at Corricoy and Woodburn already. So, but
How come Ballina's separated from Rouse and we're not in this document? Is that because he's on the board, is it, on the committee?
Look, I'd need to check how that evolved. I mean, this program came out of a report that was done by Colleton.
don't ask me. But
A guy.
how about I'd find out a bit more of the detail. There's a report that was done that this program came from, so I'm happy to find that, and and I'll also obviously be able to give you an update after I attend that, or
You might
I'll
ask
aim to
them
attend
why,
it. Or one of our
why
staff.
the Reconstruction Commission has spoken to the sugar mill that they can clean those drains without any approvals under this program. They're telling the mill that.
The mill can clean which drains?
They've told the mill that the Reconstruction Commission have told the mill committee or the board that they can bypass all the applications by doing this through the Reconstruction Commission under this program. So it's be easy to find out that's been said, but it has.
All right, we'll keep pursuing it. I think that's the focus on Broadwater is certainly bringing some of these issues to light. They're more widespread, but if we can get some solutions there.
Just something else there, like the Mayor talked about town drains compared to agricultural drains. Aren't they agricultural drains that run along the edge of Broadwater there? That go into Rattle Creek? What's the difference? Where's a town drain not become an agricultural?
It depends on the land ownership. So
Yeah,
Rattle
so
Gully.
it's on private land, it's agricultural?
Well, unless there's easements, or so.
And then when it comes on,
it's all very case by case. But
Yeah, okay.
Rattle Gully is privately owned.
Yep.
But then it crosses a road, so there'll be a section that's probably a roadside drain, and then it gets back into private land, and then it goes across private land, and then it actually comes out and goes through a Rouse floodgate, and then it goes through probably a Crown land owned outlet drain, and it ends up in the river. So tell me that's not complicated.
Originally, when there was I don't know if it was that when there was a $5 million announcement made, but it had to be 50-50, and some of the landowners just didn't have the 50-50 to put with it. So.
just back on that report, the report's good, but I think the people of Broadwater are going to read that and say it's a Clayton's report. We've done the homework and we've got no solution, which we haven't. That's how they're going to see it. There's no solution at this point in time. So we need to keep, pushing it along.
Oh, well, we'll be pushing for it because with the $5 million available, we need to get onto it, but there needs to be a solution to the drains that aren't owned. Who's going to take responsibility for them? And if someone takes them on, there needs to be funding come with them, because I can assure you there'd be a lot of drains like the one that we looked at that are clogged from the flap to the river.
It says in that newsletter that there's 77 projects to be delivered, so they must have 77 projects already earmarked, so the $5 million will be gone.
It will be,
Yeah.
and obviously we're hesitant to, take on, more drains because, as I think it's in the report, the stormwater levy, which is sat at $25 for 15 years or whatever it is since it was introduced, it hasn't CPI, it hasn't changed, rings in 250 grand. That doesn't go far. That's potentially that's one project.
$1,000 out of Broadwater. Yeah.
And the Rouse were getting 83,000 off the top of my head 40 years ago, and still getting 83,000. So, it's just the money's not there to be able to, even if it was CPI, I think it was $3 or $4 million they'd done over the years by not having any increase if it had been CPI. But fully aware of it, and as I offered to you about the general manager from Rouse coming and addressing an information session, chase that up. General manager just alluded to it, and so there's some questions. I'll word him up that he's going to have to do some research on that, so he's got some answers, because no good going away and coming back without them. So.
Just because we sort of discussed rainfall totals from memory in the workshop, we actually got some data through today. Closest to Broadwater is the Evans Head bombing range as far as the data goes, and so in 2022, we all know that was the wettest year on record, I think. It was 2,156 mils, and year to date, so for 10 months, we are at 1,720. So what are we, 440 behind. And we all know we've had a fair bit in the last few days. So we won't be far behind. And I suppose my point is everything is saturated. And it doesn't take much for your drains to be full. And it doesn't take much for the water to lie around like it is, you know, in parts of our area today after another 50 mils last night. So I know people are, and we're getting a lot of complaints about stormwater issues. It's just because everything's wet and drains are full, dams are full, and it's going to be an ongoing issue for us over this summer, the way it's looking.
And while the river's up, the flaps can't open, let that water out. Any other matters for information from any councillors?
Just have a quick comment to make, Mr Mayor, on that Broadwater report. I think it will be coming through as an email from the community, but a young woman did go missing I think it was not last weekend, the weekend before, and there is some safety concerns that they're worried about as well with regards to some of those drains. So I don't have all the details on me tonight, but there will be a email coming through to council to advise on the safety risk of some of those stormwater drains, and the police were involved, and there's more information coming, but it's very small information I have on hand, but that's inbound, just to make a note of that. So concerns are at safety as well. When you've got a missing woman and they're searching stormwater drains in high wet areas, then there was concerns for her safety, and in particular, that was pretty dangerous circumstances for those people that were out on foot in the evening searching drains for what they thought for some hours of the evening was a body. So she was found, but there's a police report that goes with it that will be coming along with that as well, I believe.
Yeah, no, we'll keep an eye out for it and have a look at it. Thanks.
Thank you. The matters information. Councillor Hayes. Put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Page 88, questions on notice nil. Is there any questions for the next meeting in writing? Item 21. No. Matters referred to closed council. Is there any? Can I get a mover, please?
Move, Mr Mayor.
Who was that, Councillor Morrissey? Seconder?
Second.
Councillor Cornish. Mr General Manager, has there been any representation in writing?
No, nothing received.
No representation from the gallery, by the looks of it. I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Going to close council. we have oh, it's Mr. Rowland. Our gallery has returned. Mr. General Manager, could you read the resolutions of closed council, please?
You happy to read the first one, Director Gator, and Director Jones can read the second? Thank you.
In the matter of 22.1, tender VP 429806, construct Woodburn Memorial Hall car park and footpath. Council, it was recommended and council resolved that 1, council accepts the tender from Northern Rivers Concreting to construct the Woodburn Memorial Hall car park and footpaths, as it represents the best value for council at $225,184 exclusive of GST, and 2, the General Manager be authorised to negotiate and finalise the terms and conditions of any contract or agreement in line with the content of this report and the available budget, and affixing the seal of council where necessary.
In the matter of item 22.2, inspection report, Fire and Rescue New South Wales, council resolved that 1, notes the receipt of the inspection report from Fire and Rescue New South Wales and the tabling of the report in accordance with the requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. 2, undertake a further inspection of the premise in accordance with the recommendations of the Fire and Rescue New South Wales inspection report. And 3, receives a further report on the outcome of the inspection at the December ordinary meeting.
Thank you. That brings the meeting to a close. Everyone have a safe journey home on the slippery roads, and thank you for your attention. Attendance. Thank you.